All right, hello. So what I'm going to be doing right now is doing a basic description of a simple skeleton app that we're going to use to make a web quiz game over here. You can see I've got 4 buttons over here, and I've created these from an unordered list, and I want to just quickly discuss about how you turn an unordered list into buttons that look like this. And the answer is going to be in CSS. So what I'm going to be doing is flipping back and forth between our page over here and the actual source code. So if we look at the page over here, the main content is going to be seen right in this section over here, the body of the page. You can see a header that says I'm thinking of a random number. That's this guy up here. I can make him larger or smaller. So for example, if I wanted him to be an H1, for example, and then I reload this page, that number is substantially larger. I'm going to bring him back to H3 because that's the size that I'm happy with right now. The main thing you're going to see over here is we've got these unordered lists called pseudo buttons, and I've got 4 list items, 1, 2, 3, 4. The way that they're styled is inside of this CSS definition over here. So we've got pseudo buttons and list item inside of something with an ID, see the hashtag for ID of pseudo buttons. And what I want to do is iteratively just remove these style attributes, and you can sort of see what's happened. So the first one is list style none. So if I were to remove this, and then I save and go back and reload this page, you're going to see that puts the buttons back on here. So one of the first things that we do when we convert list items into these sort of rectangular buttony entities is we set the list style to none on them. I can put this back over here and reload and see how that goes back. The second thing that I've got over here is a floating to the left. So if I don't float these to the left, you can see that they pile on one on top of each other. So the float controls the way that they are going to be displayed in the div order within the document. And so you can see over here, if I take both of these guys off, I have buttons, and this is looking much more like an unordered list at this point. The third entity we've got is the width, 150 pixels. So here, 150 pixels, that you're going to see that they stretch out a little bit more. Or actually, I think they fill in. If we inspect, we can actually get a sense of the overall size of these things. I don't want to scroll down too far, but there we go. Eek. You'd think I would have done this ahead of time. Okay, so the width was ignored actually in this case. Did I save it? The width, it knew it wasn't part of it. So, okay, so yeah, there's no width specified with these. Oh, dar. There's no width specified with these things, so they just go to whatever width that they actually want to be. Yeah, I knew that. Finally, we've got the line height over here being 50 pixels. So the line height, if I were to make the line height greater or smaller, so for example, if the line height is 150 pixels, this makes these boxes substantially larger. I can set them back to 50 pixels, and then it goes back to the size that we were anticipating before. Text align center. So when the text align is in the center, this pulls this back to the side. You can see the default text align is to the left. A background color. So a background color obviously is adding some sort of shade to the overall shape that we're filling in over here. And then the margin is the spacing in between these guys. So they have one solid block if they don't have a margin in between them. But you put these elements all together, and you can see how without them in the default styling, we have something that looks like just a plain list. However, when you add all these things together, you can get something that appears to be a button or some sort of clickable rectangular entity, and that's nice, and that's convenient, and that's useful. The reason it's useful is because these list items can be given names, they can be generated programmatically. List items will adhere to certain styling rules, so if I were to use a template engine and generate many of these, it would be relatively straightforward. Final thing I've got down here is this div who has an ID of response section, and then I have the span with the ID of response. And the purpose of giving things IDs, remember, is so that we can say document.getElement by ID and grab this particular entity. So you can see the span He's somewhere hidden off inside of here right now, but I'm able to grab him. And if I were to assign a variable to him, I could say x.inner, inner HTML is equal to some sort of string over here, and he's going to show up underneath down here. So I'm able to grab a sort of placeholder entity on the tree that I'll be using for later. And that's going to be sort of essential to this game. Thanks a lot.